Good evening. Good evening. As the President of the Liberal Democrats, it gives me great pleasure to welcome you to our 30th birthday conference and also to the new Southport Convention Centre. Now, just last month, we were celebrating the centenary of the Representation of the People Act, in which David Lloyd George's Liberals finally gave some women the vote. That same bill had amendments for alternative vote. Not quite PR, but better than first past the post. And sadly, those amendments were voted down. But I'm proud that Liberals and Liberal Democrats have a long and strong tradition of making our Parliament more democratic. We will continue that fight to make every vote count. Sadly, you all know that the Liberals went into a downward spiral in the 1920s, from which we only started to recover in the late 50s and the early 60s. Mark Bonham Carter, Eric Lubbock, and then David Steel won by-elections that put us back on the map, although it was a slow journey. And in 1964, we returned a massive 12 MPs. I joined the Liberals in 1974, partly because of the Young Liberals' prominence in the anti-apartheid movement, but also for the first European referendum. Brexit keeps me awake at night. Now, just let's go back to 1964. All our MPs were men. And that's why I am so delighted that 1/3 of our MPs are women, and excellent parliamentarians too. Jo Swinson as Deputy Leader, and Vera Hobhouse, Christine Jardine, Layla Moran, already making their mark on Parliament. Now, whilst Layla is mixed race, we've not had a visibly ethnic minority MP since Pramjit Gill won Leicester South in 2004. I think we all know we have much more to do. I want us to celebrate two Liberal Democrats who have, over the last 30 years, championed this journey of equality for us. Navneet Dholakia, first elected onto Brighton Council in 1961, an early member of the Commission for Race Equality and now Deputy Leader in the House of Lords, and Shirley Williams, an outstanding Labour Secretary of State, founder of the SDP and then of the Lib Dems, and a former leader in the House of Lords. No, Shirley's more than that. Shirley has been one of the key shapers of politics of the centre-left for half a century, and she is Lib Dem to her core. Shirley, we love you. Now, I remember campaigning for Shirley in the 1987 general election when she stood in Cambridge. My daughter had just been born in early March that year, so with Helen's pram laden with leaflets day after day, her big brother and I posted leaflets through the doors, and I'll bet you and your kids do that too. After the merger, I remember the excitement of voting for Paddy Ashdown as our first Lib Dem leader, feeling that we were embarking on a new era with a merged party comfortable with its values. And our preamble to the Constitution speaks to that today. And we were led by a Marine who made us strong enough to fight as an insurgent party, challenging the Tory and the Labour establishment. However, as we've discovered more recently, cutting through that two-party hegemony takes some doing, especially with our unfair voting system. And Paddy Ashdown reminds us that we've actually often been in a worse place than we are at the moment in the opinion polls. In his early years, we were just a blip. That's below 3%. But, did we give up? Sorry, I can't hear you. Did we give up? Once more, did we give up? No! We won by-election after by-election. David Bellotti in Eastbourne in 91, followed by Ribble Valley, and then the wonderful Diana Maddox win in Christchurch in 93, and the following year, David Chidgey in Eastleigh. And more recently, Sarah Olney's by-election victory in Richmond Park shows we can still do it. And our councillor numbers grew enormously too in those early years. One of the keys to winning parliamentary seats has often been by building our local government base, living our values in our own local communities. And our seats in Parliament grew steadily. 20 in 1992, rising to 62 in 2005. Fortune favours the brave, and I have no doubt that Charles Kennedy's principled stand in leading us to opposing the Iraq War helped to propel us into the victories in the 2005 election. And then, of course, we had coalition and the disaster of 2015, although, ironically, so many people now tell us that they understand how we stopped the Tories from doing the dreadful things they are now doing. But let's not forget our achievements whilst we were in coalition. Same-sex marriage, 0.7% of GDP for international development. We did that. The Liberal Democrats did that. And now we stand at the brink of the most serious event for the UK and Northern Ireland since World War II, Brexit. With Vince Cable as our leader, we are once again moving to stand, almost alone, fighting to save our place in the European Union. Initially, it was an unpopular position, but millions more now think we were right. The next 30 years are down to us, everyone in the party, to build it again. And I know we can do it. Thank you.
Hello, conference. For those who don't know me, my name is Merlene Emerson, and I'm a co-founder of Chinese Liberal Democrats, vice chair of the Federal International Relations Committee, and candidate for Twickenham and Richmond Liberal Democrats. May I first say, happy birthday to the Liberal Democrats. And whilst I'm at it, happy International Women's Day too for yesterday. I'm delighted to be speaking at the rally and to be following our wonderful President Sal, an incredible lady. I haven't been a member for as long as those who have witnessed firsthand the merger of the Liberals and the SDP, but imagine the wealth of the traditions that we have inherited, the ideologies, the best of Liberals and the best of SDP. So I would like to speak now on the theme of the 30 years of Liberal Democrats delivering for our local communities and on how we're reaching to the EU voters, especially in the coming elections. A show of hands, please. Who's involved in the elections in May? Great. I will be myself in Richmond and Barnes, and my running mate is Anne McKee. She's half French and half Irish. She was not at all political till the referendum result, and she then became mad, so mad that she joined the Liberal Democrats and is now fighting for the local council too. Do you know that the Liberal Democrats are reaching out to over 1 million EU nationals in May to encourage them to register to vote and to use their votes to send a strong message to Theresa May on her handling of Brexit, or should I say mishandling? We have targeted adverts in 21 EU languages, the biggest campaign we've ever run to get voters to register, and the biggest online advertising program outside of a general election. Local elections are held in 4 yearly cycles, and as you probably know, and this year is more urban than other rounds. So there's all-out elections in London, and also due to boundary changes in some of the historic Lib Dem cities like Leeds, Birmingham, Manchester, Hull, South Lakeland, Newcastle. But the Liberal Democrats are going to make local election with real momentum, no pun, because we've been winning by-elections every week across the country. And only last night, we had an incredible result in North Church, in Hertfordshire, taking a seat from the Tories with an incredible vote increase. So let's all congratulate the newly elected Councillor Lara Pringle and her team. Every vote for the Lib Dems in May will be a vote to protect our vital frontline services from social care to education to ensure we get the best value for the council tax money. With the Liberal Democrats, they can have better. But last but not least, let me just mention another thing that's very new to us, which is the Alderdice report that's recently been released looking at the culture and processes of the party with regards to ethnic minorities. I hope most of you have read the report. In short, John Alderdice has called on every single member to take responsibility for changing the culture of the party. He's affirmed the leadership's commitment to eradicating any barriers, and I'm proud and privileged to be chairing the Race Equality Policy Working Group appointed by FPC. We will be bringing our research to the autumn conference with a consultation paper. In the meanwhile, please look out for signing forms to join EMLD, Ethnic Minority Lib Dems, as we plan to relaunch with a new name and mandate as recommended by John Alderdice. It will be well-resourced, showing our party's commitment to race equality, not because it's politically correct, but because society is that much richer and more prosperous if we tap into the talents and resources of our diverse communities. So like Sal, I'll be quoting Paddy Ashdown, quoting Tagore, the Indian poet. Unity in diversity. Let's be united in our diversity, and let's win some elections this May.
Good evening, I'm Dick Newby, I'm leader of the Lib Dems in the House of Lords. And when Paddy Ashdown was leader, I was his chief of staff. When you look back to 2003, it seems obvious that the Lib Dems would oppose the UK's involvement in the Iraq War, and that Charles Kennedy would lead that opposition, both on the huge march on the 15th of February and in subsequent debates in the House of Commons. But at the time, it was a lot less clear-cut. Until the last minute, there was a possibility that the UN would vote for military action, which would have posed a very painful dilemma for the party. Would we support the UN, or would we support peace? And in respect of the march, there were many powerful voices urging Charles to have nothing to do with Stop the War Coalition, who were organising it. And once having taken the decisions, Charles came under fierce attack in the Commons and the media, being called a traitor, a coward, and much worse. Yet throughout the whole period, he remained calm, resolute, and persuasive. This was put to the test when one evening Tony Blair rang him up to say he was about to announce the appointment of the Hutton Commission, which was an inquiry into the death of biological weapons expert David Kelly. He wished to appoint a Lib Dem MP, and he wished to make an announcement a couple of hours later in Parliament. Charles immediately asked about the remit of the inquiry, and on being told that it was very narrow and would avoid looking completely at the role of the government in the run-up to the war, he refused to have anything to do with it. No Lib Dem was appointed. Politically, as the absence of weapons of mass destruction became clear and the horrors of the aftermath of the war itself unfolded, we reaped the benefits of Charles's courageous stance. Sarah Tether won the spectacular by-election victory in Brent East a few months after the invasion, and at the subsequent 2005 general election, we won 62 seats, our highest ever total. Today, the country faces an even more fundamental decision than over Iraq. And whilst there are many differences between Brexit and that war, there are some lessons which I think we can learn. First, you must have a clear message. On the war, it was no military action unless there was compelling evidence that Saddam had and planned to use weapons of mass destruction. We have a clear message on Brexit. Brexit makes us poorer, less secure, and less influential, and it must be stopped by giving people a vote on any Tory Brexit deal. Second, you must be prepared to lead. 1 million people took part in the Great Anti-War March. And of that great throng, the Lib Dem contingent was only some 3,000. But in terms of political leadership, Charles provided it. Very many people who agree with us on Brexit will never join the Lib Dems. But by being open to everybody who agrees with us, we can play a leadership role in what's rapidly becoming a huge national movement. And third, you must be self-confident and resilient. Charles faced huge personal and political abuse. He never wavered. We now face vitriolic criticism on our Brexit stance, and this is likely to become more rather than less shrill in the months to come. However, we wear the protective shield of conviction, as Charles did, and we wear it with pride. Friends, Charles Kennedy and the Lib Dems didn't stop the Iraq War, but we can stop Brexit. I'm extremely sorry Charles isn't with us in this fight, but I really believe his spirit can inspire us to a Brexit success. Thank you.
Good evening, conference. My name's Aria Babu. I kind of joined the Lib Dems on a whim. I stayed up all night watching the election coverage, and then about the time my parents were getting up for work, they found me in the kitchen sobbing over Nick Clegg's resignation speech. And then that evening, in an emotional, sleep-deprived haze, I watched Paddy appear on Question Time, and somewhere between being presented with an edible hat and talking about the membership surge, he said, "If it is the case that a party does what it believes to be in the national interest and gets a result like that, who else is going to dare act in the national interest again?" And that sentiment really resonated with me. So I joined the Lib Dems, and I went to conference and made a bunch of friends, founded my university's Lib Dem Society, and became steadily more entangled with the youth wing. We've existed under a number of different incarnations over time, but every generation of young liberals has managed to do something remarkable. In the 60s and 70s, YL opposed apartheid by digging up cricket pitches. During the days of the SDP Liberal Alliance, young liberals with a contingent of rebel MPs organised to make the party take an anti-nuclear stance. In 2008, the chair of Liberal Youth stood outside conference in a wedding dress to highlight that people can vote, people can get married before they can vote in this country, in some cases. In 2012, young liberals backed a campaign where hundreds of teddy bears bearing pro-democracy messages were dropped over Belarus to protest Europe's last dictator, Alexander Lukashenko. Young liberals then organised an online Bears for Belarus campaign, raising awareness for the issue in the UK and beyond. And the cult rumour is that our website is still banned over there. I could go on through the trials and tribulations of youth politics, the sheer number of activists we pumped into the Eastleigh by-election win. There's Jess Insull's campaign for gender-neutral school uniforms, Scott Emery's amendment for a higher minimum wage for uncontracted hours, campaigning to save Erasmus to give young people the freedom to study across Europe. There's Finn Conway taking a university campaign against the Vagrancy Act to Parliament in under a month, and then, wonderfully, same-sex marriage, one of the most admirable legacies from the coalition, started out as a Scottish Young Liberals policy. We have so much to be proud of. If you're a young liberal and you go to young liberal things, you'll be used to older members of the party saying to you, "You're radical, you're young, you should be telling us what to do." And I think, isn't that nice? Sal thinks we're cute. But actually, it makes sense. Like Sal's mentioned right now, she joined the Lib Dems, in part, I guess, because of the Young Liberals' campaign against apartheid. She knows what we have the capacity for. If you, I don't think YL has been as radical as we have been in the past, but researching all this history has inspired me to want to fight, and seriously fight, for the things I believe in, not just in a passive, I hope the FCC will finally let us debate the Greenbelt kind of way, but but in an audacious, teddy bears and worthy, attention-grabbing campaigns kind of way. We have a courageous, passionate, intelligent heritage to build on. Not too long ago, at a Q&A, Paddy Ashdown emphatically told me that I should be a thorn in Vince's side. So conference. All I ask is that you view any acts of mild civil disobedience kindly. I just hope that in 30 years' time, my generation of young liberals will leave a legacy worth celebrating.
Hi, I'm Lucy Netzinger, and I'm the leader of the Liberal Democrats on Cambridgeshire County Council, and I'm afraid I can't really follow that. The pupil premium was a coalition achievement we should all be extremely proud of. It has made a real impact, ensuring that our most vulnerable children get a fairer start in life. An additional sum of around £1,000 is given directly to schools for every pupil who qualifies for free school meals, children from the poorest families in our society. This policy has led to more money being directed to schools in the most deprived areas, as it is those schools who have more pupils who get pupil premium money. At a time of major financial challenges for schools, this has been crucial in supporting the budgets in more deprived areas, where heads are less likely to benefit from financial support from parents' associations. As the leader of the Liberal Democrats on Cambridgeshire County Council, there are some coalition policies I would struggle to stand here and support. As John Major and Tony Blair would no doubt agree, every government makes mistakes, and the coalition made some. But there were also many, many good things, and the pupil premium is high on my list. Educational inequality in the United Kingdom remains stubbornly high in comparison with other countries. In this country, who your parents are has a massive impact on how well you are likely to do in school, with children from wealthier families leaving school with far better GCSEs and A-levels than their less well-off classmates. This is not only manifestly unfair, it is also an enormous waste of talent. And with Brexit round the corner, my goodness, our country and our economy need to make the most of all the talent available. The pupil premium, with its sharp focus on children from the poorest families, has made a real difference to many thousands of young people. Pupil premium money has been used by schools in a wonderfully wide variety of ways. One of its great advantages as a policy is that schools are expected to spend the money in the way that will best benefit their pupils. I've visited schools in Cambridgeshire where the breakfast club not only means children from the poorest families get a proper meal before school starts, but this fun and hugely welcome start to the school day has made a massive difference to attendance of the poorest children, who are now keen to get to school in time for breakfast. Many other children have benefited from extra support with individual subjects, helping them to keep up with classmates who get more support at home, or to overcome barriers such as dyslexia. For other children, the pupil premium has given them opportunities they would otherwise have been excluded from, such as the opportunity to learn a musical instrument, take a drama class, or join a sports club. I know of one child whose pupil premium money allowed her to have violin lessons, something her family would never have been able to afford. She is now playing in the county youth orchestra with a range of university and career opportunities open to her, which would otherwise have been impossible. The pupil premium has also had the effect of focusing the attention of schools on their economically disadvantaged students. Every head teacher must know how their free school meals pupils are being supported, and heads are accountable for how the money is spent. In Wales, Kirsty Williams, as Education Secretary, has been expanding the policy, doubling the pupil premium and directing more money to schools in the most deprived areas. These are real achievements, and we as a party should be very proud of introducing such an innovative approach. As our policy paper, Every Child Empowered, Education for a Changing World, makes clear, there is far more to be done to improve education in this country and reduce inequality. But we should be proud of the opportunities the pupil premium has given to thousands of our most vulnerable children. Thank you.
I'm Ed Davey, and amongst other things, I'm a party member from Kingston. At any birthday party, you need a present. And my present to you today is my sock. It's a clean sock. It's my Greenpeace wind turbine sock. I'll explain a little later in this environment tribute to the party. For I joined our party when it was aged 1. Because under Paddy Ashdown, we had become Britain's best party for the environment. And I worked with two of the party's green heroes, Simon Hughes and Norman Baker. And together we produced what was back then a groundbreaking policy, What Price Our Planet. Simon had already been voted Britain's greenest MPs with many campaigns, including his famous blue-brown campaign, Surfers Against Sewage. Norman campaigned against GM foods, and calling the GM food company Monsanto public enemy number 1. Norman got himself on the Wall Street Journal's front page for that. But Norman got boring as a transport minister with his £1 billion local sustainable transport fund. It only cut more carbon and helped more communities per pound than any transport policy ever. And MPs like Andrew Stunnell, Don Foster and Diana Maddock, they put through, in opposition days, their Green private members' bills. And outside Parliament, so many more Green Lib Dem campaigners. Jane Voice, Kate Parmenter, leading the campaign for the protection of rural England. And of course, many amazing Lib Dem councillors. Too many environmental achievements to mention, especially in the London Borough of Sutton. In Sutton today, under the leadership of Ruth Dombey, Lib Dems have achieved the highest recycling rate in the capital. Lib Dem Eastleigh, thanks to people like Louise Bloom, have embedded climate change action across every council policy. And the fabulous Dave Hodgson, Mayor of Bedford, has even built a hydro power plant on the Great Ouse River. In Scotland, Britain's tidal and wave industry was boosted by two great Lib Dem Scots ministers, Jim Wallace and Nicol Stephen. With the European Marine Energy Centre in the Orkneys, it's simply no coincidence that the world's largest tidal project, Maygen, is now producing green power in the Pentland Firth. And I'm proud to have served in the coalition government, because Liberal Democrats transformed Britain's environmental record, often in the teeth of Tory opposition. Vince Cable's Green Investment Bank, our plastic bag tax, renewable power. I could not be more proud that, thanks to you, I commissioned more renewable electricity than any British politician ever. Including wind farms, Boy, did the Tories hate those. But thanks to Liberal Democrats standing up against the Tories, new wind power is not just the greenest power, it's now the cheapest power. And there's something else the Tories didn't like about Lib Dem Green success in the coalition. What we achieved on climate change in the European Union. Liberal Democrats took targets from Britain's Climate Change Act and Europeanised them with a 2014 EU agreement to cut Europe's greenhouse gases by 40% by 2030. The most far-reaching British international climate change policy success ever. When I told the excellent EU Climate Change Commissioner Connie Hedegaard a 40% target was Britain's ambition for European climate policy, she politely laughed at me and said it was too ambitious. Yet Liberal Democrats, we delivered it. Through 2 years of climate diplomacy and tough EU negotiations, boy, could we teach these Tory amateurs a lesson or two. We won our negotiations, winning for Britain, winning for Europe, winning for the climate. Happy birthday.
Good evening, conference. I'm Elizabeth Dukes. Some of you might know me as the author of our policy to raise the income tax threshold. But I'm going to come clean. This wasn't actually my idea. It came from a friend of mine, Graham Oakes. We were having a discussion on tax at conference. Yeah, a really Lib Dem thing to do. And Graham said, if we really wanted to help the lowest paid, we'd raise the income tax threshold and allow them to keep more of their money. But, he continued, it's not possible to make that big a change. But a light bulb had gone on in my head, and I took it as a challenge and set to work. Remember that back in 2008, under a Labour government, anyone earning more than £120 a week had to pay tax. The research I found suggested that cutting taxes for the low paid has two main effects. It improves the self-esteem of those who are allowed to keep their own wages rather than pay tax and claim benefits. And when those on a low income get extra money, they spend it. They improve their lives. But it doesn't just impact on them, it impacts on the local economy, which reaps the benefits of people having more money to spend. The more I looked into this, the more I liked the idea. Just a few weeks later, Vince Cable came to speak at my regional conference. I sidled up to him and innocently asked, is there any reason we couldn't raise the income tax threshold to the level of the minimum wage? Ah, he said, that's my ultimate dream. And he began to explain to me that allowing people to keep their own earnings increases their self-esteem and improves the local economy. I was more determined than ever. I took the idea to Liberal Democrat women. They loved it. After all, low-paid workers are disproportionately women. So anything that helps the lowest paid, by default, helps women. They suggested I ask Jo Swinson MP for help. Jo gave me access to the Treasury, so all the calculations in my proposal were all official figures. And with the support of Lib Dem women, at our manifesto day at the LSE in 2009, I presented a costed discussion paper proposing that the income tax threshold be raised in line with the minimum wage. That was the day I realised that this idea had a huge amount of support, both party members and the parliamentary party. I wrote it up as a policy motion for autumn conference, which was submitted in the name of Lib Dem women and several local parties. And one day in July, Nick Clegg was on the news saying, our new tax policy, the first £10,000 tax-free. And I thought, hold on, that's very nearly my proposal. Then the following year, it was on the front cover of my party's manifesto. I could not have been more pleased. And that is where I expected the story to end. Following the general election, my tax policy became one of the party's red lines for going into coalition. It was exciting for me to watch as throughout the coalition years, the income tax threshold was raised in leaps and bounds. So if you have an idea that just might make 27 million people better off, just remember that you've already taken the first step. You've joined the party where members make policy. You're in the right place to make a good idea happen. I did.
I'm Dr. Mohsin Khan, and I can say we're the party of the NHS. From its birth by Beveridge, we've been pushing his vision forwards. I work in mental health as a psychiatrist, and I know ignorance, one of the giants Beveridge wanted to defeat, has been the sad hallmark of how past governments treated mental health. Under Labour, I remember telling patients the wait for talking therapies in Oxford was 300 days. And then, Paul, Norman, Nick, in government, finally shining the light on mental health. Finally, under Lib Dems, waiting time targets, eating disorders funding, fast access to talking therapies. When nurses or fellow doctors hear that I'm a Lib Dem, they often tell me how pleased they are with Paul and Norman's work. Finally, under Lib Dems, the Beveridge giant of ignorance towards mental health stopped. Yet, there's more to do. We all know how scary it is to leave home, go to uni or work far away for the first time. Now imagine being Kim, a 13-year-old suicidal girl I saw. Kim plucked up the courage to come to hospital, waited 5 hours in a short-staffed A&E until I got to see her at 4 a.m. And then I had to tell Kim, the nearest bed for you is 300 miles away. 300 miles. How scary is that? To somewhere you've never heard of, far from your parents. Yet we put young people through that. Scandalous. And what is the government focused on? Hard Brexit, not Kim. 1 in 10 doctors I work with are from the EU. And I'm proud that we have been loud and clear. No to a hard Brexit, no to a Brexit leaving less money for the NHS, no to a Brexit risking our staff. We've been loud and clear on backing staff, not picking fights with junior doctors and student nurses like the Tories. And we're the only party saying loud and clear, we will fund the NHS and care system for years to come. Clear plans, backed by experts, a penny on the pound of income tax. I've been proud to work closely with Norman as he has led the call for cross-party consensus on this, while May and Corbyn show no leadership, nothing on funding, nothing on care caps, nothing on inequalities. Like Beveridge, we know well-being is about tackling the causes of inequality: poor housing, poor education, poverty, discrimination. In town halls, in the Welsh Government, in Westminster, we are fighting for that. We are the party that set out the NHS's principles at its birth. And we are the only party with the vision to keep this beloved institution, this set of ideals going, so NHS staff like me can continue giving quality care, whoever you are, no matter what you earn. Liberal Democrats are the party of the NHS. Thank you.
Good evening. For those who don't know me, I'm Zoe O'Connell. Amongst other things, I'm a councillor on Cambridge City Council. But the reason I'm up here today is I'm also on the executive of LGBT+ Liberal Democrats. And as you may know, this year, thank you, is a special anniversary. An anniversary of something really, really bad. I can see a few staff members near the front looking a touch worried now. Don't worry, I'm not talking about the formation of the Liberal Democrats. I'm talking about the 24th of May, 1988. The Conservatives implementing Section 28, banning any mention of homosexuality in schools, leaving a generation of frightened LGBT kids with nowhere to turn. Well, Liberals back then were determined folk, just as many of us are now, and we're not going to waste any time. After all, the old Liberal Party had already included full equality in their 1979 general election manifesto, so many in the newly formed Liberal Democrats were already well on board. And they didn't let being busy with the formation of a new party slow down their campaigning. Just 9 days after the party was formed, Simon Hughes, MP, was amongst those standing up in the Commons speaking out against Section 28. 30 years on, what's changed? In terms of a Liberal commitment to LGBT rights, not much. Our party started as it meant to carry on. There's a reason the motto of LGBT+ Liberal Democrats is always been there for you and always will. There have been many campaigns along the way, equalising the age of consent, opposing the ban on men who have sex with men and their partners, giving blood, civil partnerships, the first gender recognition bill in 1996. But the highlight of 2013 for many was a bill championed from within the Home Office by Lynn Featherstone, same-sex marriage. There were, of course, highs and lows along the way. Watching their lordships debate what constituted consummation of a gay marriage was enlightening. And for the lows, there was the predictable roll call of the usual suspects, spouting homophobic... well, it's the rally, I'm actually not allowed to swear from up here. Unfortunately, there are some ways in which other parties have not changed in the last 30 years either. But Liberals won. Liberal Democrats in government, doing what Liberal Democrats do best, delivering on equality. From that exhilaration that followed same-sex marriage, you might think the fight is over. Sadly not. The need for Liberals in Parliament is as strong now as it was back in 1988. LGBT asylum seekers still face intrusive and wholly inappropriate questioning and end up being sent back to countries where they face persecution, imprisonment, even death. And we're now seeing the battle over equality for trans people hit the headlines. That's ahead of a consultation on trans equality later this year, and eventually a debate in Parliament. Now, I already know which side Liberal Democrats will be on. The right side. We were ahead of history, we are ahead of history, and I hope you will help us stay ahead of history. Thanks for being here, and I hope you have a great conference.
Conference. I'm Tom Brake, the Member of Parliament for Carshalton and Wallington, and the Liberal Democrat Brexit spokesman, or perhaps I should say anti-Brexit spokesman. Now, nobody can accuse me of getting involved with the Liberal Democrats because it was going to be easy. We were at 3% in the polls when in 1988 I stood for Paddy Ashdown's newly formed party in a by-election in Hackney. Hackney had a well-deserved reputation for poorly run services, and there was more than a whiff of corruption and complacency. We won that by-election against the odds on the back of a typically muscular Liberal Democrat grassroots campaign, leafleting, door-knocking, taking up casework and campaign issues. That's how we won seats then, and that's how we are winning them now, as we have just seen in Sunderland, once considered, by the way, to be in the Brexit heartlands. I hope we have Sunderland with us. Now, as Liberal Democrats, it's never bothered us when the odds have been against us, and we've never been afraid to speak our minds. Whether it's Kosovo or the Iraq War, equal marriage or passports for Hong Kong citizens, this is the party that will always do what is right, not what is expedient. That's why we took the position that we have on Brexit. On that, as on all the other issues I mentioned, be in no doubt that more and more people will soon come round to our way of thinking. Now, in the immediate aftermath of that disastrous vote in 2016, won on the narrowest of margins and on the back of the most brazen of lies, now at this point I was told I should insert a joke. And I've actually brought a joke with me. I'd like to share it with you. Now, unfortunately, the joke happens to be our Foreign Secretary, but I hope he's enjoying his first Liberal Democrat conference, and I'm going to put him back in his box, the best place for him. Now, after that disastrous result, Tim Farron set out a very clear position for the party, and we were the first to press for a vote on the deal. On this issue, the defining issue of our time, we are the party that is generally for the many and not the few. And we are not afraid of Rupert Murdoch, Aaron Banks, Jacob Rees-Mogg, and all their wealthy and powerful elitist friends. We are simply not prepared to sit back and watch as this government, aided and abetted by a so-called opposition which refuses to oppose, puts Brexit before our economy, British jobs, the National Health Service, the future of our young people, and our reputation on the world stage. We are bigger than this and better than this, and that is why we will continue to campaign robustly and for as long as it takes for a vote on the deal and an exit from Brexit. Now, on the occasion of our 30th birthday, we can look back with pride on our achievements, our commitment to liberal democracy, and the 5 years of stable government we provided in coalition between 2010 and 2015. What a contrast to now. Now, 30 is no age, however, to rest on our laurels, and we look to the future now with confidence, with the largest and youngest and most idealistic membership that this party has ever had, that is going to, I think, rattle some cages, apparently. Jolly good thing, too. And a steely determination to take the battle of Brexit to the Conservatives and Labour and win, no matter what the odds. And in a world of fake news and the populists of the right and left threatening everything that this great country stands for, I make this promise to you. The Liberal Democrats will fight to our last breaths to defend the free, open and prosperous Britain that we all love. Thank you. Now, hopefully my timing is right, and it is now my pleasure, my great pleasure, to introduce the Deputy Leader of the Liberal Democrats, Jo Swinson.
Thank you, Tom, and thank you all for inspiring speeches. And isn't that a great way to start conference, to see just how far we've come in 30 years? Happy birthday, conference. Now, I was wondering how we might celebrate our 30th birthday. And I thought back to the last birthday party that I organised, and I thought, no, the chaotic sugar rush of a 4-year-old birthday party is once a year definitely enough. And then I thought, well, neither do we really want the kind of raw energy of an 18th or a 21st where you're dancing till dawn, because that's not really what you do when you're 30 either. I think a 30th birthday party is that little bit more relaxed. Maybe you've got some friends round, maybe you have a nice dinner, good conversation, nice bottle of red, Schlur. And I am reliably informed this is essential, cake. I found this out last month for my 38th birthday. Andrew, my 4-year-old son, said to me, "You've got to have cake, Mummy." So we had cake. I have to say, I'm not convinced that his motives were entirely altruistic in making this request. But I think at 30, as an individual, and indeed also true of a political party, we're more mature. We're perhaps a bit more at ease with ourselves. We lack the naive certainty of youth, but we still have the idealism. I think as a party, it's fair to say we've had our growing pains, and we've certainly done a lot of growing up as well. Now, it's not just our 30th birthday that is being celebrated this year. We are also celebrating the 100th anniversary of women, some women, getting the right to vote for the first time. And as a proud feminist, this has been a rather wonderful set of events for me to be involved in, and I'm sure that many of you will have also been doing so. So about a month ago, on the 6th of February, we had the actual 100-year anniversary to the day of the Representation of the People Act being passed. And I tell you, the House of Commons, it was like feminist Christmas. It was brilliant. All the love, the solidarity, people dressed up in suffragette colours, totally getting, away with the rule. You're technically not allowed to wear slogans and stuff in Parliament. That was all out the window in the spirit of the suffragettes. It was just perfect. And we've also had International Women's Day. We've had the WOW Festival, 50/50 Parliament, and also recently we've had the really powerful campaigns, Me Too and Time's Up. And do you know what, conference? Time is up. I can't tell you how amazing it is, by the way, to be joined in Parliament by Layla, by Vera, and by Christine, and for us collectively to be a third of our parliamentary party. It is something I have been working for to get more women elected since my earliest days in this party, and it feels so good and so different to have a higher proportion of women in Parliament. But let's be clear, a third is not a high watermark. A third is a staging post, because, conference, I am not prepared to wait another 100 years for equal power. We need to continue to make changes in our party and in our everyday lives to become more inclusive and to challenge stereotypes on gender, yes, but also on race, on disability, religion, age, sexual orientation, gender identity, class, and more. And we need to do all of that in a spirit of humility, because we all have something to learn about the experiences of others. So I think birthdays and anniversaries often have us reflecting on the past. But there are some other milestones that make you think a bit more about the future. And I've been thinking quite a lot about the future recently. And oh my goodness, when you contemplate that Brexit future, do you realise just how much the country needs the Liberal Democrats? Changing the course of our country on Brexit seems like such a big thing to aim for that it can feel impossible. But, conference, it is not impossible. What we need to do to stop Brexit and to pursue our Liberal goals is to win. We need to win hearts, win minds, win seats and win votes. We need more Liberal Democrat councillors, members of Parliament, MSPs, AMs. We need more Liberal Democrat representatives working in their communities day in, day out, putting Liberal values into action. And the good news is, conference, we are winning. Now, in council by-elections, many of you will enjoy the Thursday night sort of rigmarole these days. You look on Twitter, you wait until the council by-election results come out, and then you can have a little bit of a celebration, typically. Because compared to the other parties, we are gaining more seats and vote share than the rest. Since the general election last June, we have won 22 more council by-election seats. And we also need to be looking at parliamentary by-elections too, which is why I was so delighted in January to go and visit the fantastic candidate Laura Gordon, who is our Sheffield Hallam candidate, doing such an amazing job there. And you know what? We need to be ready, because whenever that opportunity comes, we need to win back Sheffield Hallam. So here's the challenge to you, conference. That got a great cheer. I want to make sure everybody that clapped really loudly there goes to Sheffield, donates some money to Laura's campaign, or at the very least, make some telephone calls. And we also need to focus our winning energy on the local elections in May, which I know so many of you are doing and working hard on, and have come to conference for a little restful break and bit of extra inspiration. And this work that we're doing is absolutely critical. Our national breakthroughs are built on local successes. Our ability to hold the government to account, to get a hearing in the media, our very credibility relies on us being able to elect more Liberal Democrats. It is only by winning that we can make the change that we want to see a reality. And that includes, of course, keeping us in the European Union. Now, Brexit is not only bad in and of itself. There is also a massive opportunity cost. Every hour of civil service work, of parliamentary debate, of ministerial focus that is spent on Brexit is an hour that is not spent thinking and planning for the big challenges that we face as a country and a world over the next few decades. On new technologies, you know, how we design our economy and our services for a world of artificial intelligence, quantum computing, and DNA personalized medicine. What protections are needed? What regulation? How do we think through the ethical questions of these new technological advances? How do we make sure that as a country we are leading the way? The government is nowhere on thinking of these issues because of the obsession with Brexit. Or the future of work itself. You know, what is that going to look like? How do we adapt? How do we reskill? How do we ready ourselves for the march of the robots, for the automation that is going to be so significant in our workplaces? And how do we start to value the uniquely human skills that are going to be more important, the creativity, the caring? Or if you look at public services, the huge challenge, and we've made such a great start with Norman's health paper, how do we make sure that our public services have sustainable and secure funding, very cognizant of the big demographic challenges that we're going to be facing in the future? And how do we make sure we get the benefits of new technology and underpin the whole lot with this basic deal that for so many people feels broken? We need to make sure that if you work hard, you do get on in life, and public services are vital to making that a reality. Or if you look at the role of business and the way in which so much of that seems to have got out of control, how do we tackle the disconnect between supersized corporations and society? How do we make sure companies remember and reinforce their responsibility to their communities and in how they behave to workers and the environment? And arguably the greatest challenge of all, how do we make sure that we are working, taking steps to prevent, mitigate and adapt to climate change so that we refuse to leave our children a world that is broken beyond repair. While the Liberal Democrats are looking to the future, the other parties are stuck in the past. We've got the SNP that is trying to unpick the Act of Union 1707 without recognising that the path to progress is about collaboration, it's about working with others, it's not about tearing apart successful democratic countries. You've got Labour. They seem to think all the answers lie in the 1970s. Well, there was a lot of good stuff came out in the 1970s. I like disco as much as the next girl. But, you know, economic stability was not one of them. And then you've got the Brexiteer Tories, you know, Liam Fox, Boris Johnson, swanning round the world, some kind of harking back to days of empire, expecting that other countries are going to be falling backwards over themselves to do trade deals with us. It is a fantasy. Here, in 2018, it is the Liberal Democrats that have the right foundations, 100,000 members strong. And we have the bold ideas to build a strong and liberal Britain and world. It's the Liberal Democrats who can lead the way for the future challenges that are facing all of us. But in order to do that, conference, we need to work and to win right across the country. So conference, let's tonight agree, all of us, that we are going to make absolutely sure that our next 30 years are even more successful than the last. Conference, let's get out and do it. Thank you very much.